So, welcome to Gaule's Question Time. I'm Andrew Gaule, and I've been running these podcasts now for about 15 years, speaking to executives in lots of interesting areas that are impacting business and technology. And today I've got the pleasure of being joined by Blayne Cooper from Henley Business School and University of Reading. Hi, Blayne.
Hi Andrew, how you doing?
Very good, very good. And declaring my interest, I did my MBA at Henley
Good, good.
over
That's what I like
20,
to hear.
over 25 years ago, and I'm still involved with Henley Business Angels and actively involved in supporting students and sort of stuff like that. So we came across each other a number of months ago and that now. So maybe introduce yourself to kick us off, please.
Well, it's always good to speak to one of our alumni, and Andrew, you've been a great supporter of the business school as well. It's been brilliant to work with you and meet you over these last few months. So yeah, I'm Blayne Cooper. I head up the employer engagement team at Henley Business School. I've been at the business school for a couple of years now, so almost 3 years, and it's my journey to the business school is definitely not a linear one, which is good. I'm in the career space, so it's probably my journey works really quite well. It's certainly not what I trained to do. I trained actually to be an actor, but ended up being a teacher for 20 years. I worked in corporate in central London for about 10 years. I worked for a higher education institute as well in London, and then came to the business school about 2, 3 years ago.
Great, great. And for me, I think it's a great passion and a great challenge on how we engage younger people, students, and get them into the employer sort of side of things. So it'd be great to get your perspectives on how this changing landscape now with employer engagement. What does it involve?
It definitely is a landscape that has significantly sort of evolved in recent years. It's it's not an easy space to be in. I think companies are, they're increasingly focused on, recruiting talent, not only that kind of possesses the right skills, but people that are demonstrating sort of adaptability, emotional intelligence, a strong sort of work ethic. That's kind of what they're looking for. And we're really having to kind of change with that. We know young people coming in, they grow, and they're, each generation is really different. I've got, three boys at home, one who's 20, one who's 17, and one who's 10, and they're, vastly different. And it's kind of interesting. My 20-year-old is at university as well, so it's really interesting seeing him and how he's kind of going through his kind of studies and engaging with that. But that landscape is changing. We've seen, obviously, post pandemic, how things have changed. We've got hybrid work, remote work. That's really kind of pushed some of the boundaries. I know myself from a role that I did when I was working in central London. One of the things that I was told there, that some of the people in my team, these were roles that they couldn't do working from home, sort of unequivocally, no, you can't work from home. And then, interestingly, post pandemic, what happened? Everybody was working from home, and miraculously now everybody can do it. Um, we're seeing it a lot. More employers, they're offering things like flexible internships, placement models, to really kind of accommodate these sort of virtual hybrid environments. And as an employer engagement team, we're having to kind of change and shift with that all the time. And we're not just the only institution. We know there are, dozens, hundreds of institutions across the UK, all trying to engage with employers in varying different ways, and that does become a challenge each year.
Mhm. So could you give us a bit of a breakdown in terms of sort of numbers and types of things you're doing then? How many students have you got in your sort of cohort? How many sort of go on to employment, internships, apprenticeships, or getting those engagement sort of things while they're at college? Just give us a bit of a feel for those sorts of numbers, please.
Yeah, so our numbers at the business school are quite large. Henley Business School is a large business school. We're a full service business school in terms of offering degrees and courses right from foundation all the way through to sort of PhD. We've also then got our sort of corporate development side, so executive MBAs, apprenticeships, and the business school, to keep it quite simple, is essentially split into kind of two parts, which we call sort of pre-experience and post-experience. So pre-experience are all of our foundation degrees, our undergraduate degrees, and our pre-experience master's degrees. And what we mean by that are students who maybe only have 1 or 2 years industry experience, or essentially have transitioned from a UG degree into a master's degree. And then we have our sort of post experience. So that's again where you've got your executive MBA, you've got your coaching programs, you've got the corporate sort of development side. My team relatively exclusively work within that kind of pre-experience space. So at the undergrad sort of level, you're looking at sort of somewhere around about 800 students in each year group. So if it's a traditional sort of 3-year degree, you've got roughly around sort of 800 in each kind of year across sort of multiple programs, whether that's kind of traditional sort of business administration programs through to kind of finance, accounting, entrepreneurship programs as well. We'll then have there's a roughly numbers are quite fluid, and we're just kind of looking at numbers at the moment, but probably on average, over about sort of 1,000 students who are across the kind of the pre-experience postgrad space as well, in which the team supports. My team, we work with students who are looking for placements. So we'll have groups of students who will take what we call kind of a traditional year out and go for a year in industry, so a placement year. So they'll do that in their undergrad degree somewhere between their second year and their third year. So they'll do 2 years with us, they will go do a placement with a company, and then they will come back and they will do their final year. So essentially, a 4-year program. Some students won't do that. Some will go down the kind of the summer internship route, or potentially may well do internships alongside their program as well. And then we've got obviously our pre-experienced master's students, of which for some of those programs, particularly our masters in management, masters in finance programs, their final module, they've got an opportunity either to do a work placement, or they can do a study abroad program, which we facilitate, or they do a strategic project where, again, we bring in a number of companies into the business school who then engage with those students. And then some of those students will then do internships potentially at the end of their study. So a large proportion of our pre-experienced postgrad students are international students, particularly from areas like China, for example, and India. And once they've completed their master's program, they'll go back to do an internship, and we support them in terms of that as well.
Mm-hmm. And how are you finding the marketplace at the moment for being able to find those sorts of places, with the dynamics, I guess, of coming out of COVID, economic challenges within businesses, the rise of AI? What's the sort of feeling you're getting on these changes that are coming down the pipeline for you to be able to place students part-time, or to get experience, and then also for them to get the jobs at the end of it? What sort of, a lot of questions in there, but just give us a feeling of your priorities, or the things that are keeping you awake at night.
I certainly think the things that are keeping me awake at night are supporting students who are looking for those placements, those internship opportunities. It is a challenging market. It is, we can see that, we know that, but we also know the impact that a placement has, for example, on an undergrad student. So over 95% of our students who study or who do take a placement year, are likely to get a 2-1 or a first one, in their degree classification. We also know the impact that has on their employability as well. So talking to companies, not just kind of sort of locally or nationally, but globally as well, when you're speaking to kind of the recruitment teams, very, very much so, they are going to be focusing on those placement years that the students have had. Those are the kind of the questions, those are the things they're going to want to tease out and talk to students about, in terms of the opportunities, the experiences that they've gained whilst they've been on placement. Mm-hmm. So the challenge to find those placements and to have those opportunities for students is increasing. As I mentioned earlier on, we're not the only institute. Every university, business school, will be looking at placement opportunities for students. So competition is increasingly is increasing every year.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a really super dedicated careers team who work tirelessly with our students in supporting them and getting them ready for their when they are applying for placements. And then my team as well, in terms of kind of managing the whole sort of placement process, in terms of supporting those students, through their application process and ensuring that the placements that they're doing are really valuable as well, because that's important for us. So it's not just a case of doing a placement for placement's sake. We're looking for something that is really going to give value to the student, so that when they get to that part when we want them to kind of shout about it through LinkedIn and on their CV, that the things that they're talking about are really going to help them moving
Yeah,
forward.
yeah.
But as you mentioned, it's a challenging landscape. It isn't getting any easier.
And looking at it from the employer's sort of side, from the amount of time I've spent with you and some of the
Yeah.
discussions we've had with some of the students, having some fresh eyes coming into an organization, being able to do projects, being able to work as a team on projects brings value to the companies themselves and that as well. So what's the value do you think that these generally younger people, or they could be post experience and that as well, who are bringing in experiences and new things into organizations? What's the value to the organization, the employers for this?
Well, we know employers are increasingly looking, for students to participate in kind of meaningful, real world projects. I mentioned that we bring a number of employers onto the business school to engage in strategic projects, and the key point is that with that kind of new talent, there's new knowledge, there's new learning, and you want to be able to kind of bring that into a business that freshens it up. Reading as well, we've got a really wonderfully diverse student body, and that's what you want to see in your business. You want to see a diverse population of employees from a whole range of different kind of backgrounds, and that's something that I want to see kind of sort of businesses sort of really sort of tap into. We are seeing a shift to things like virtual internships as well. And I think that does allow students to contribute to kind of business operations remotely whilst, gaining sort of valuable experience. So we're seeing more of that sort of happening. There's definitely a focus, I think, around that sort of development of digital literacy and adaptability. And we're seeing that those are real kind of crucial skills in a sort of a rapidly sort of changing kind of workplace. So that is happening a lot in terms of what I'm seeing, as an offer for employers, for students.
Yeah.
Students obviously having to really kind of sort of look around in terms of what they're looking for.
Yeah. And one of the things we looked at together was the Lumi Quest sort of type
Mm.
platform, which is that digital platform which has a structure of projects, a structure of learning on both sort of sides. So, I think applications like that mean that an organization has got some support and has got some structure to that learning, and you're not just bringing in a naive young student who has got no structure
No.
into what they're doing, right? So there are ways of this hand holding or support to get valuable output and that from it that you could have been paying hundreds of thousands of pounds to a consulting firm to come in and do something similar. So there's some different comparisons here, aren't there?
There are, and there are the rise of sort of virtual work experience for me is something that I've been involved in for a number of years in sort of different kind of ways. And I know there are platforms out there which are really good and give students opportunities to engage and to build skills and to learn. But for me, human interaction
Yeah,
is still incredibly important, and getting feedback. So if I create a project or I'm working on a project as a student, getting feedback on what I have created is really vital for me in terms of moving on and learning and moving to the next step. So there are some platforms that the feedback is quite generic. It's definitely helpful in terms of engaging in the project, but where students have the opportunity to kind of speak to the company about what they've created, I think that is kind of where we,
Yeah.
what I want to see, where I want that to kind of go. We also, I think there's a sense here that students, there are students who are in really kind of challenging situations. They potentially are carers, they're single parents as well, and they can't always access an internship or a placement in the kind of traditional sense that we would consider it. So,
Mhm.
virtual experiences are really vital also for those types of students who maybe can't engage in a 1 year program or can't engage in an on-site um, internship. So I think for me that's really key.
Yeah.
And I what we want to do at Henley is really strengthen relationships with employers. We want to. One of the things that we've just released is, or a challenge that we have, is supporting our pre-experienced master students who, as I mentioned earlier on, there is a module at the end where they do have the opportunity to do uh, an internship. We are seeing that that's very challenging, particularly for international students, to get those kind of 6 to 8 week internships. So we've just created a scheme. It's called our Masters Internship Scheme, where companies can essentially apply to us, and we will pay the company to host the student. So
Right.
it's what we're looking for are 6 week internships. So it's about 200 hours. We pay at national living wage, so it's about just over £2,500 for the 6 weeks. What we ask is that the company is obviously UK based, that they can pay the student through PAYE, but ultimately what we do is we pay the company pays the student.
Right.
We still ask that the company hires, with integrity. We're not essentially just giving them a student. We would want, the company to go through their regular normal hiring process, because I think that is also really important, not just for the business but also for the student to be able to go through that process. We do want them to have, the right student, and at the end of the day, if the right student isn't there for that particular role, then we're not forcing the business to take a student, but we're super confident that they would absolutely find the right student through us. But what we're saying is, look, we can help, we can fund that. What we hope from it is that at the end of the 6 weeks, that the business are so astounded by the work that the student has done that potentially they'd keep them on, and pay to have them longer, maybe even give them a full-time role if that is a potential. But what it does do is it really helps those students in terms of that placement opportunity. But as I said, the funds come from us.
Yeah. How many did you say you're looking to place in that in this master's program?
So we've got a figure, but what I would say is that figure is flexible, in the sense that if we've got students who want to engage in that program and we've got businesses that want to take us up on that, then we're not going to turn that away.
Okay.
So rather than sort of say, here's a hard and fast, this is the number that
Okay.
we've got.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's not just a handful that are going to be taken
no,
right. So if an organisation is interested in this and they're particularly in the Thames Valley, London Way, or whatever like that, then they can follow up after this and get in touch with you and the team.
absolutely.
So it's not like this is a short period and there's only a handful that's going. This is something that's a positive discussion to be had.
It is a positive discussion, and what we're looking for, these are summer internships, so there's enough time for businesses to look at their pipeline, obviously for 2026, and to
Yeah.
plan for it, effectively, properly. We obviously, as a business school, like we would do with any of our placements, we would do our due diligence on companies, and move forward. But we've got we're happy to talk to people. My team will talk you through the scheme and how it works, and how you can kind of sort of engage with us. Obviously, there are some systems that
Yeah,
companies have to sort of jump on at Reading, but as I said, we really hope that it's a great opportunity to engage with young master students who are looking for a little bit more experience that will really help them. Some of these are international as well,
yeah,
so they bring that kind of international sort of flavor with them as well, which I think is would be great for
yeah,
businesses.
yeah. Good. So, yeah, I suppose one of the topics that I wanted to cover, we touched on a little bit
Mhm.
for employers going through the recruitment process, and they put a job advert up now, and you were seeing in lots of places they get thousands and thousands of applications, and then they've got to try and filter through those to make that decision to employ. And to me, these sort of these placements give the opportunity to do a relatively low risk. As you said, you want it to be a serious recruitment because there's going to be resources from the organization,
Yeah,
and this is somebody's time that they're sort of taking as a student doing the internship. But that's a relatively low risk thing, isn't it? To be able to engage with somebody online or in person, as you said, for a number of weeks to get to know them and then understand whether it's right on both sides, rather than filtering through thousands of applications,
mhm.
putting these thousands of people through lots of different, interviews, online interviews, AI interviews that are coming and sort of stuff like that. It's a far more effective way both ways, don't you think? Is
I do, and for me, what we're asking for businesses here for these specific roles for this for the masters for the masters internship program is that those roles are ring fenced, obviously, to Henley students. That we wouldn't necessarily see those opportunities outside of Henley, um, but it feels a bit of a no brainer. In
yeah,
it's a probably that's a terrible pun, but I think if I'm a business and here is an opportunity for me to engage with up and coming talent from a outstanding business school like Henley, and I'm actually going to be paid to take this person on for
yeah,
6 weeks.
yeah,
That feels like a really great opportunity to explore and really engage with new knowledge and new thought to help kind
yeah,
of sort of push the business forward,
yeah,
and also doing a little bit of kind of giving back, giving some opportunities to young people who really do need those experiences to help boost their brand, boost their CVs, um, and to take those experiences back. And what we also hope with this is it becomes a kind of a long-term partnership, so that it's not just if one is successful, that perhaps then these businesses will come back the following year and they'll want to do it again, and actually that could then grow, and they might think, well, wow, we took one last year, but actually we've got maybe two or three opportunities. Or if you're a relatively sort of large kind of business, it might be one area of the business does this, but then I call it kind of Tesco talk. Another part of the business is, well, I heard you had a Henley student for 6 weeks. How was that? Oh, it was amazing. It was excellent. It was this or
mhm,
that. And
mhm,
then another part of the business wants to do it. So
yeah.
I see it as something that can really grow.
Okay,
Um,
great. And I suppose one of the key topics that I'm quite involved with at the moment is AI and how AI is coming into business and how
yeah,
it's changing organizations. And I'm running a program actually at Henley, an executive program, which is around how AI is going to strategically change organizations. And one of the key themes that we're talking about through that really is about organizations now need to think about AI employees. So, you know, we're not talking about this is not a technology implementation now. These things that AI agents can do, they can do better and faster and cheaper than what people can do.
yeah,
And then, so there's that layer of thinking about an AI employee, and then where do the business processes now change? So where do your people now need to add value in the most effective part? And then how the business model is going to change in an organization. So I guess taking a step back from students coming out of university and connecting it, I guess, to these internship type things, where do you see um, organizations and these types of employment placements going to change the future of employment? Very big topic, very big sort of question on that there, Blayne. But where,
Yeah,
where,
no.
where do you think these future for students is going to and businesses?
Well, we it's one of these things, isn't it? We can't get away from AI. It's 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 not now just coming; it's actually here, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's there, and what I'm finding from talking to lots of different businesses is everybody's at a slightly different sort of level. Nobody's kind of started at one point and we've all gone together at the same
yeah,
time. It does feel like, some businesses have kind of like they've leaps ahead, others are kind of sort of dabbling, some are a little kind of scared and want to kind of hide away from it. But I, we're definitely seeing that it has an impact on some of those, particularly kind of the graduate level, at some of those more kind of junior roles. And again, I don't like using kind of terms like that, but where some of that has become sort of automated rather than using kind of sort of graduates. Um, talking to a couple of businesses last year where they focus much more on kind of placements, but don't necessarily then have a kind of a graduate program because of how they're kind of using AI or where that is. However, as I mentioned earlier on, the ones where I think it's really successful are the ones where they're embedding AI, but they're not losing that kind of human
yeah,
element to it. And that's really important. And actually, that's the bit that we had IBM on campus last year, and they were kind of talking through how they were kind of developing their sort of AI and their kind of internal platform. And at that point, I think I was, I'm in no way do I put myself in a situation where I think I know what AI does or where it is. I think I use it sort of fairly kind of sort of basically. But I learned an awful lot from that in the sense that AI develops because of obviously what we as humans put into it. So every time, for example, you go on to Copilot or ChatGTP or anything like that, and you're asking it a question, the AI is learning, isn't it? It's learning from you.
yeah,
Um, my this is I'm slightly going off topic, but I think it's kind of worth making the point. My my 20-year-old who is at university, he's doing a degree in physiotherapy, um, and there's a there's a definite shift, I think, in university academia and an understanding or an acceptance that students are going to use AI, not to write their responses, but to use AI in a way of perhaps throwing in a report that's a few thousand words and asking it to kind of like just give you the kind of the bare basics of it,
yeah,
or getting it to kind of look at something. But he asked, and I can't remember which AI tool it was, but it asked it basically to give him a review of how he had used AI in the last 12 months,
yeah,
which I thought was really amusing.
yeah,
Um, and then the AI uh, gave him the option to kind of do what they to do a roasting of him, which is like a kind of a more kind of negative view of how he'd used it, of which they did it, and he read this out to us, of which I was absolutely laughing at this point because I thought there was some truth in
yeah,
some of the AI said, but it did suddenly dawn on me about, okay, we are using it, and
yeah.
it is a real challenge.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly in the work that I do, as I just talked through there, organizations are going to have to rethink what their processes are and how they sort of work. And, just one sort of side example, which I can put the link in the notes from this. We work with Henley Business Angels over the
Mhm.
last 2+ years. And so I said, now if we're using AI to review the pitch decks that we come in, to
Yeah,
help the entrepreneurs, to help the investors, we could move from a model, some of the corporates that I'm speaking to, from doing one £5 million investment to they doing 50 investments in earlier stages of businesses. AI can fundamentally change the business model in that, and it's going to fundamentally change the business model in lots of industries.
Yeah.
And I think that the challenge or the opportunity is those organizations and those students have to change so fast because just as we're talking here, right? GPT, OpenAI, is only just 3 years old. It's only just turned 3 years old. So the students that graduated this last summer, we didn't have GPT when they first started in university 3 years before, right? So the speed of this change and the change that's going to go into organizations and building up that resilience and experience with the sorts of things you're doing with the employer engagements is so important because the employers can learn from these students that are learning, using in creative ways. Some might say it's cheating. Some might say it's being creative. Some might say it's using it in different ways. But they're on the leading edge of using this sort of stuff for organizations as well, right?
For me, so I do a lot of work with students around things like LinkedIn, for example. So we know, LinkedIn uses AI. It's an algorithm-based kind of platform, and it's no different. You want, I say to students, you've got to make LinkedIn work for you rather than you work for LinkedIn. And it's like any of these platforms. So the more you engage in it, the more you put into it, the more that you get it to understand you, then actually the output from it is much more valuable for you as an individual. So, LinkedIn Learning, Handshake, all these kind of AI kind of driven algorithms, they they recommend internships or job interviews or projects. And the more you kind of, for example, if you take LinkedIn, the more you work on your LinkedIn profile, the more that you're using LinkedIn in a way to kind of engage with the companies that you're really interested in, then what it throws back at you is much more going to be a fit to your profile as a student.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to give you suggestions and the things that are much more relevant to you. So I think we've got to embrace it, but we've got to make it work for us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit like a human relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
you meet somebody for the first time. If you sit there and you don't say anything, and the other person's kind of doing all the talking, eventually the other person's going to just get up and walk away,
yeah,
because I'm not engaging.
yeah,
And it's the same kind of thing here. We have to engage in it in order for it to actually help us.
yeah,
You know, we you know we know that companies are using it. We know that it drives up efficiency. Um, I was reading a report a while ago. McKinsey had said, I think it's around about sort of it drives up efficiency by about kind of 30% in that kind of hiring talent space.
yeah.
So we can see that, and we know that businesses are using it more and more. And as you mentioned, that change in young people, even now, the ones that are studying currently at the moment versus maybe the ones that just graduated or even graduated a year ago, where platforms like Copilot and ChatGTP, etc., didn't exist, and now they do exist, and now they're using them.
Yeah,
We have to evolve.
yeah,
I talk to teams about how we communicate to students. So yes, for example, we communicate to students through email
mm-hmm.
as an example. Uh, Students don't like using email. They
Yeah, yeah,
don't like.
yeah, yeah,
But in the business world, it's still one of the primary ways in which we
yeah,
communicate. But young people don't like it.
yeah,
They
yeah,
don't like to communicate. So who's changing? Is
yeah,
it the young people coming in, or is it going to be us? Do we
yeah.
have to change? Do we have to evolve?
Mm.
And that's that constant having to evolve is such a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Blayne, it's been fantastic to talk through, and I think that point there about there's lots of change happening, and I think what I wanted to get out of this podcast and this interview really was around that. the employer engagement can be a way of bridging that. I think that you've shown that and illustrated that here, that short internships, periods of time engaging with the university and the business school, and getting the students and that involved with organizations is a low risk, relatively cheap as well. If you're engaging with, like the example of the master's program there, where you're paying for those things, and it builds those relationships to build talent into your organization and help it to grow. Right, that's the
Yeah.
key thing in that here, for people and organizations to grow, and that's so it's fantastic. So
And we know in 5 years' time, business education is will more likely be quite technology driven. That is
yeah,
the nature of where it's going, and there will be a real blend of in person and online learning, and those AI kind of power tools for personalized learning and kind of virtual sort of simulations. Those things are they're just going to develop. They're going to keep being there. We just have to, as I said, we keep working with it and
yeah,
trying to be ahead of the game, which can be can be a challenge.
yeah. No, keeping up is great. Thank you very much for sharing your insights on that today, Blaine.
Pleasure, Andrew. It's been great to see you and great to jump on the call with you. Thank you so much.